So in this video, we're going to be looking at the new UV editor in Maya 2017 Update 3. As you can see here, I've isolated the body of the Witcher character, which has not yet applied any materials, and it also doesn't have proper UV coordinates. So when I selected, you see that there was only a planar mapping from the front applied to this body, and I will use the new UV editor to cut this into pieces and to isolate all these belts and straps and little things here. In the new UV editor, you see that the top line here, the status bar of the UV editor, has been cleaned and there are less icons here. The pull-down menus have been refined, so there's new pull-down menus and all of the functions have been sorted properly. And also here on the left side, you see the new UV toolkit where you can find all the functions that you can use for cutting and sewing, unfolding, aligning and arranging the UV shells. You will also find that in the UV editor you have separate hotkeys, different from the ones for the 3D view, and there's also a shift right mouse button marking menu for any type of selections, very similar to the modeling shift right mouse button marking menus that you find in 3D. So let's start with this object here, and before I start with it, I'm going to switch on some coloring. So here in the UV editor you will find this button, the shaded UVs. When I click with the left mouse button, you see that parts of the character become red. This is the facing of the UVs in the UV editor. So anything that is front facing in the UV editor is blue, and anything in red is the back facing, which is not surprising because we've done a planar mapping from the front here. So only the blue ones are seen from the front. There's another mode here. When I click with the right mouse button, it turns kind of pink. This is a mode that gives different colors for the UV shells. So whenever you cut something off, it will receive a different color. So I can show you in a minute when I do my first cuts, and you will see how that works. So we start with the lower body here with this belt, and in face selection I'm going to click and shift double click on the next polygon to select all the faces around. This little extra strap here picks up this face loop, and I'm going to hold the tab key to draw over the additional polygons here on the side to select those as well. And also on the side of this little strap I'm going to draw over some polygons, because these will help me to select the polygons underneath this little strap, because I'm going to use the grow selection function to select the sides of this strap here. So simply hold the shift key, the larger sign will grow the selection once, and let's select the sides here, everything underneath this extra strap. And only here I have to do some manual selection. So I'm going to select these 3 polygons here, these 2 polygons over here, and maybe this one over here. And there are some underneath this buckle place here, there is 2 extra polygons that I need to select. And now I can go into my UV editor. Under cut and sew you will find create a UV shell. So this is now a separate UV shell. I can select it separately. So for this extra strap here on the side, I want to isolate that as well, because that will keep me from unfolding the thing properly. So that's the first thing I want to do. Back to face selection, I'm going to select all of these, and maybe the ones here on the side. Or we're going to grow this 2 times, once and twice. And then I've selected with grow selection, I've selected these polygons as well. So I'm going to use the tab key again, and now I deselect these by just drawing over these and deselect them from the strap. So with the strap I can again create a UV shell, and for this strap here I also need to cut the side. So double click on this one here, and I need to cut this open. Simply click on cut, and you see now it's highlighted with thicker lines, so that we can unfold that properly. And also for the belt, it's still a round thing because it sticks together in this region here. So I want to make some extra cuts to get rid of this. So I'm double click on this edge here and double click on this one, or shift double click on this one. And then I zoom in a little bit and shift click this and this edge here. And on the other side, do the same thing, shift click, and I'm going to cut these 2 ones as well. So cut. Okay, so I can also do these cuts when you hover over these options here. You see that you can shift left mouse button to open the option box, for example, and you can also use the hotkey while your cursor is in the UV editor. So Shift X in the UV editor will do the cut. Shift X here in the 3D view has the meaning of grid snapping. You can see up there in the status bar, the grid snapping button turns blue when I do the Shift X. So I would have to modify this to be able to use the Shift X here in my 3D view. That would definitely make sense. So now we have two shells here, the belt itself and this extra thing here on the side. Now for the body. So let's go for the body. Before I do that, I want to select the whole shell here, this belt shell, and this one over here. And for these two, I'm going to go into the move tool and move the whole thing up because I need that later for deselection. I want to deselect some pieces here. Because for the body, I will do now this. I'm going to click and shift double click on the next polygon to select a face loop around the whole body. And now I'm going to use the grow selection to grow this until I'm here at the lower body. That's where I want to cut it off. But with grow selection, I've already selected parts of the belt, at least parts of the belt. So the selection has grown over the belt. So I'm going to control select these faces in my UV editor. That's why I've moved this thing up so that they are no longer selected. And again, we're going to create a new UV shell. And this time I'm use the shift right mouse button and create UV shell is over here. So this is the even faster method. And you see now the coloring shows me we have a shell over here, we have a shell over here, and one over here. The one over here, the lower part is actually this big part. So I want to cut out this inner section here. So I'm using the tab key to select them all, grow the selection once, and again, shift right mouse button, create UV shell. Okay. So one thing is left for the body part, for this body thing here, and for the lower part, I need to cut this open to unfold it properly. So there's various places where I can do that. So in edge selection, I'm going to double click on this one here and Shift X in the UV editor. And you see this is cut already. And then down here, we're going to do the same thing with these three edges here, 1, 2, and 3, Shift X. And that's it already. So I'm just moving the cursor to this on the side in the UV editor, and Shift X over there will give me the desired result. So now with shell selection turned on, I can grab all of these shells that I've created and I can do an unfold. So unfold is down here. I can click on this one. I can also shift right mouse button and do the unfold from here. It's the same thing. And you see that these pieces are now placed already, so the layout is kicking in and doing its job. So this piece is not unfolded properly. If I do that again, the unfold, it's unfolding. I don't know why that is not working initially, but it's, you know, at least it works on the second go. So I'm going to go and rotate these a little bit more horizontal and move them so that I can later use them to deselect things when I accidentally selected pieces. So this is the extra step here. And there are some little pieces that we need to sew in and put somewhere. So these little things here on the side. Okay, that's the lower part of the body. On the upper part of the body, we can start to use symmetry. So when I'm in face selection, for example, I could go and shift control right mouse button, and here's my symmetry. The symmetry will work if I do an object symmetry. So here you see whenever the highlighting is in blue, that's going to work symmetrical. And when it's in red, there's no similar thing on the other side. So for this one here, I can do a symmetrical cut. So click and shift double click to select a face loop and then grow the selection until you are at the edge. That's what I want to cut over. And I'm lucky, you know, it selected the rest of the arm. Otherwise, I just shift control over it to select the rest of the faces. And again, shift right mouse button, create UV shell. And we can do the same thing with the inner part here. So face selection, click, or, you know, hold the tab key, select everything. And that is symmetrical for the other side as well, because we've seen blue pre-selection highlighting, create a UV shell. Beautiful. And the last thing that I want to do, and I can do that symmetrical as well. So I'm going to click on this edge here and double click on this one here to select all of the edges, and then shift X to cut them on both sides. You see that happens on both sides, and I'm happy because, you know, that was a very easy one, a very easy way to cut this open. It's a little bit difficult, more difficult here on the shoulder pads, because the shoulder pads have these tiny little edges, so I need to go very close and to move the camera a lot to get these edges right. So I'm going to use a new tool in Maya 2017 Update 3. That's the 3D Cut and Sew UV tool. This tool lets me cut things interactively. So I'm just clicking on the surface and it cuts them interactively. So you see when I'm drawing around, it cuts open these pieces already. What I can also do is to click on something and then double click on another thing to cut an edge loop. I can also hold the tab key to highlight edge loops. So all of these red highlighted edge loops are continuous edges that I can cut with a single click. So I'm holding the tab key here and I'm clicking on this one here and it cuts it immediately. Click on this one here. Whoops. Does it click on this one? Click on this one. As soon as it is highlighted in red, it will cut the complete thing, and tab, cut, boom. So here's my new shell, and it's also on the other side. That's a very nice thing, even though you can clearly see that this character is not symmetrical. So that's why I'm not on topological symmetry. I'm just on object X symmetry, which works with a certain tolerance. So you don't need to care about the topology. It just needs to be something similar there. So again, I'm holding the tab key here, and I need to click this one extra, tab key. And then we're going to go over to this one here, hold the tab key, boom, highlight, and one more. Oh yeah, maybe there's an extra edge here on the side. I click on this one here and then hold the tab key, boom. So you see it cuts it out, colors it immediately, which is very cool because now I know instantly I've cut these already. Now I'm going to go with the selection, with the shell selection. I'm going to go now and select all of these pieces here. But with symmetry, it could be, and I'm not sure if it's going to happen here. So it could be, you see that it has not selected some of the pieces over here. And that comes from the symmetry setting. It's simply, there is one vertex maybe out of the tolerance. So I'll rather select these, maybe switch, turn off my symmetry now. And I'm going to go select these manually 1, 2, 3, because I'm going to do the same trick again as before. I move these aside to use them for selection, or for rather deselection here. So I'm going to go to face selection now, select all of these faces here for the pads, or they are still selected. And then I grow the selection. So once and twice and 3 times actually. So with 3 times grow selection, I've selected the surrounding plus this extra edge here. And that is exactly what I want. Now I control deselect the shoulder pads again, and I have what I want. And I create a UV shell from that one. So these pieces are also boom and done. And I can select them all. Actually, it's much better to do that in shell selection mode. And then I do the unfold and you see, wow, beautiful, works beautifully. Fantastic result in a very few clicks. So we go on like that with the collar here. And again, I'm going to use my cut and sew tool. So as I said, you can hold shift, for example, go somewhere over here, you hold the shift key, and then you can draw continuous edges around the neck of the character. You can also double click on continuous edges or hold the tab key, you know, depending how you like it better. Double click and you see highlighted in white what is cut open already. So we want to cut open this one here, or you know, isolate it. And now I just need to select this little thing here. So you see the inner part is cut out already. And I think I'm missing one little edge here for the color. So color has turned into a different color, and now I need some more selection. So this one here, and double click on this one to make sure that it unfolds properly. So that's my color, and That's also done. So again, selection here, the shell selection mode. When I pick this thing, I can move it around and do the unfold with my marking menu. So that's the piece that I've done here. That's the collar. Okay, fast forward a few steps. I've isolated now most of the pieces of the body. You see that the main body part here still consists of 3 parts that stick together. We need to separate those. I've also isolated the belts on the body and most of the straps that are here. Actually, all of the straps, I think. And now I need to arrange the pieces in the UV editor a little bit better, because you see that the scaling is not right here for the main body part, for example. It's much smaller than the collar, for example. So that is not right. And also I want to straighten some of these pieces, this belt here, for example. And, you know, make sure that things like this belt here is correctly horizontal so that painting is a little bit easier. So we can shift and spacebar in the UV editor to make sure that we have enough space here. Or maybe I make it so that I hit Control and spacebar so that the shell disappears and we really have a lot of space. So first thing that I want to mention here are these little pieces that we have here. You see all of these little tiny little polygons that lay around here. Let me collect those. I think it's all single polygon pieces. These 4 ones here. So when I move that downwards a little bit, in the UV tool, there's a function that lets me actually move them around. So when I select one of the edges, there's this function stitch together, which is the former move and sew function. So when I have the correct edge selected, then the thing is going to disappear. So I'll really just select one edge, and I can also hit the D key. You know, when it's not moving, then it's an open edge and it cannot be, there's no larger shell that can be found. So they just gathered their larger shells here. So the smaller piece will be moved towards the larger shell. Then this one here is the main body part, and these are the regions around the arm. So it doesn't make sense to keep those together here because it won't be a chest anymore when I unfold it. So what I want to do is to detach these pieces here, the arm pieces, and then to open the body part so that it can unfold properly. So I'm going to use the cut tool here to cut this open. You will also notice when you zoom in, you can use the mouse wheel, and when you hover over the region that you want to zoom and you use the mouse wheel, this region will stay on the screen, so it's not going to scroll out. That's a very nice behavior. You know, to cut this open, maybe I do it over on this side here. Maybe just, you know, I'm cutting just along these edges here. That's it. Okay, so now this is cut open. The next relax or next unfold will unfold this properly. Also, I have little arrows here, so I can just select this edge here and hit Shift S to sew these edges together. Shift S. We also have some funny pieces here. So when I go to the Move tool and in the shell selection, I can grab the shells just so and drag them around. So these have really funny shapes. So it's actually, these are the straps, and the reason why some have this funny shape here. So this one here, for example, that's the shape that I want, that I'm trying to achieve. And these ones here have been unfolded and, you know, spread open for no particular reason. So what we can do here is to use the sew tool and just sew a few edges together like so. That should be enough to make sure that this stuff sticks together. So maybe that was too much here. And also these ones here I'm going to sew together, and also these ones. And then, you know, back to the shell selection mode, and I'll do the unfold. And make sure when you shift click on such a function, when you want to keep the things where they are, you just uncheck the pack feature here. Then these pieces just stay where they are and they just unfold again. So maybe I'll select these edges here as well. Maybe these ones here, and sew them together. Right, and then unfold this piece again. You see, you know, that makes this the whole thing a little bit better. And we can also, when I'm in the rotate tool, I can just grab them and rotate them horizontally just to make sure that packing later has it easier with all of these pieces. This one here as well. So there's many pieces rotated slightly that I can straighten manually. So I just grab them and straighten them a little bit, and then we have these belts here. So let's grab the belt. So this one here can be rotated horizontally. That's pretty easy. We can also try to use the Orient Shell tool, and you see here, so when this is rotated slightly, it could be that it gets completely vertical or horizontal, depending, on some criteria of the function. So this Orient Shells will make sure that they are mainly straight. So when I grab this one here and move it around, you see that this is, for some reason, the unfold mechanism has bent it a lot. So what I'm going to do now is to select an edge loop here and keep selecting edges along the side. Maybe not this one, but these two here, and also some on these sides. So what I'm trying to achieve is to straighten this edge. So I can straighten it a little bit by using the scale function. So when I have the manipulator on the screen, I can scale it like so. I can also use the function straighten UVs. So straighten UVs takes all of these UVs, or it converts it into UVs and then straightens it and goes back to edge selection, which is cool, which is nice. And then, I have a straight line here. I will now pin this straight line and then select the whole shell. And with this pinned straight line, when I run the unfold has to unfold it around these pinned UVs. So it cannot move the pinned UVs. You see, it has created some sort of a very straight unfold. That is nice. So when I unpin this whole thing, when I optimize it again, you see it just reduces the stretch on the whole thing, and this works nice. Just have to remember, that some pieces should not be unfolded again. Maybe these ones here need to be unfolded again. Right, so this is the body part, the chest part here. For the scaling, we're going to look a little bit later. I think that's it. With all these pieces, I can now run a layout function. And in the layout, let's go down here, shift left click, opens the option. So let me reset everything. So what I want to do is to do some pre-rotation. And I can leave it horizontally, for example. This pre-scaling should look at the 3D ratios. I think at the 3D ratios, the real ratios should make sense here. Now, when I apply this, it will pack everything and, try to make everything horizontal, especially these belt pieces here. You also see that the packing is very dense. So when I, for example, here under selection type, when I say I want to select all the overlapping pieces here, it selects quite a few pieces because there is massive overlapping here. So instead of that, I can increase the shell padding, which means it's going to leave some space between the shells. So a value of 6 pixels should be fine for this one here. So now we have much more space between the pieces, depending on the resolution of your texture, because we want to avoid the color bleeding and stuff like that. Okay, so you can turn off the shell pre-rotation. You can allow the tool to rotate things in 90 degree steps, for example. Maybe that becomes a better stacking here. So I'm going to select everything. So now it rotates some of the pieces, but only in 90 degree steps, and make sure that hollow regions are filled with something. You see in all of these hollow regions here, there's a smaller piece in there. Maybe some smaller pieces could go in there. This whole mechanism of unfolding things and then use the layout function to put them into the UV space is a very effective method here in Maya 2017 update 3.